Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mean Green Gridiron podcast. Here for the last edition of our position group season preview series. I am joined by the director of the early 2000s Spider-Man trilogy, Carter. How's it going?
It's going great. I think superhero films should return to a sense of uh, they should feel personal, right? They should feel
Yeah.
grounded, and that's what I tried to capture with Toby. Um, I kind of gave up by the third one, but at least the first two were really good.
It wasn't your fault. It was, we'll blame it on, Sony or whatever. But yeah, I think we all appreciate the work there. So, um, anyways, yeah, we're gonna start off by talking about the offensive line today. So good, good group here. I think I talked about this one of the other pods, but the the position group that I think has the most highly rated, kind of from what are various preseason publications, has pretty unanimously been the offensive line on this team. You've got Braden Nelson back at left tackle after starting 11 games as a true freshman. You got Gabe Blair back at guard, who was a 3-year starter at UNT from 21 to 23. A guy whose starting days go back to the Luttrell era, so that's getting pretty rare at this point. But and then a good host of newcomers. We'll talk about those guys. Tayonta at center. They kind of had him at guard and then Blair at center, but I think they've switched recently. Just kind of looking at some of the at some of the stills from the practices, the scrimmages that they've been posting, and then Johnny Dixon at guard. He started half the season or so last year, transferred from Virginia Tech. Jimto Obadegwu from Kent State. He was their starting left tackle the last 2 seasons, and now he's going to be playing right tackle. And host of other guys, newcomers, some depth guys who kind of retained on the roster. So, Carter, what's your first impression right now of the offensive line going into the season?
It's my favorite position group, the big boys.
Yeah.
We talked about the running backs already. Part of the reason that UNT is always successful at offense is because we're really good at recruiting running backs and could just kind of churning them out like a factory. It feels like anytime we lose one steps right in and replaces them, and it's always nice. We always have good running backs, so we get to thank the offensive line for that. That would be the running backs' first thing they tell you. And yeah, it's nice to have the returning production. Obviously, look at a guy like Gabe Blair. Feels like he's been here forever.
Yeah.
Feels like this is his 10th year. Super excited to have him back at center. Got a couple transfers coming in that are projected to start in Nana and Abadegwu. So yeah, I think it's looking good. Looking good. Offensive line has been a strength of this team. Last year, I think Shane Porter was top. I don't know where he was. I forgot to put in my notes, but he was like top 20 in the country in yards per attempt, which means he was getting a lot of space, finding good gaps. So you like that in your offensive line. I've gone back and watched a couple games since our last podcast, and just like what I've seen, I think the gap separation is nice with these guys, and there are not a ton of defensive lines on our schedule this year that really worry me. So as far as position groups that I think will stand out, I don't really know that this offensive line is going to be like a game changer in terms of like highlight plays or anything, obviously, but they will probably be one of the stronger position groups when we're all said and done at the end of this year. I think this is probably the most sound and reliable position group we have is the offensive line. That would be my statement. I know you said that a couple of minutes ago, but I would agree with you.
Yeah, and not only I think are they just sound and solid across the starting unit, I think that the depth is really what sets this group apart from the rest. You look at left tackle alone, you've got behind Braden Nelson, you've got Larry Moore, who started 6 games for us last year. You've got Jamon Lamb, who transferred from SFA. He had 7 starts last year. So you've got guys 2-3 deep who are playable, reliable guys, or semi-reliable at least. Guys who, if you have one starter go down, you're not scrambling. There was definitely times last year it was like we had one guy go down. We had who was it, Jet Duncan go down, and then we were kind of
Chet
scrambling.
Duncan, yeah.
Luckily Mercer stepped in and ended up being a really good player. But going into the season, you didn't know about that. Was a big unknown. This year, I think you look across the board. You mentioned Nana. You go to Nana from Virginia. He had 9 starts his last 2 or 3 seasons there. I'll say one thing about him is that looking at the most recent scrimmage, it looked like the interior offensive line was Blair at left guard, Yanta at center, and Johnny Dixon at right guard. So I think that Nana was kind of I think he'll sort of be the 6th man of this offensive line, where if the any of the guards go down, he'll replace them. If the center goes down, you'll move Blair over to center and then put Nana in. So I think he's in that regard, he's sort of a 6th man where he could be. It doesn't matter necessarily who goes down on the offensive line. I think he goes in to replace them either directly or by bumping somebody else over. So that's a really good that's a really good situation to have, where you have a 6th man on the offensive line who you can rely on, and you expect there won't be a big drop off, and he has experience playing at this level. Another guy at left guard who got a lot of mention, I think, from Eric Morris was Dylan Shaw. He transferred from Texas Tech. He was a guy who, according to Eric Morris, he said that Dylan Shaw was in the running to potentially start at Texas Tech before he transferred over here. I don't know how true that is or how much that would have come to fruition had he stayed there, but still that seems like pretty high praise. And if you look at the offensive transfers that we brought in, for the most part, Eric Morris has started sticking towards getting guys who are coming up as opposed to guys who are coming down. He's talked about how you get guys from the P4, P5 schools, and they come in and then they don't start, and it becomes sort of problematic where they were expecting to start, and now that they weren't, now that they've gone to a second school and they're not starting, they get a little bit disgruntled. Whereas the guys coming up from FCS or D2 or JUCO or whatever, when they come, they're not necessarily, they don't feel so guaranteed in the start, so they're a little bit easier to appease and not worry about disrupting team chemistry. If they're not starter, they kind of recognize, okay, I'm going up a level. It's not going to be the same. Dylan Shaw, like I said, he was coming from Texas Tech, so he's sort of an exception to me. Whenever Morris brings in a guy from a P4, P5 school at this point, offensively, I see that as somewhat of an exception to where, you look at all these guys like Cameron Dorner from D2, Tyrese Hunt Thompson from D2, Tayonta from FCS, Jaden Bex from FCS. Like that's definitely the direction he's going. So when he brings in guys like this, I think it kind of stands out to me. Like I said, Nana, same thing from Virginia, and then going down to right tackle a little bit. Obadegu coming up from Kent State. I mean, they're FBS, but I think he wanted to go to a little bit higher profile school. And Desmond Magia at right tackle, I have him as a backup right tackle. He might be our backup tackle, honestly, at either tackle spot. He got a lot of good pub from Eric Morris, as well as being sort of a spring standout. So, and then Julio Madero is JUCO All-American. He's another guy at tackle who has a chance to see the field, or at least be in the rotation, be in the 2 deep. So there's a lot of guys fighting, not just for the starting spots, but for the 2 deep spots, and being guys who the coaches feel like they can trust. But anything else you notice here? I mean, I know one thing that stands out here is obviously the size. Some of these guys are well above 300, 6'4", 6'5", but anything else kind of stand out here to you offensive line wise?
That's exactly what I was about to segue into, is that just this looks like one of the bigger, like, in terms of just athletic size, these guys are huge. Like, I've just been going through like their bios for like the notes tonight, and I mean, at least from the little bit of practice that I've been able to catch, like, these guys look massive. Obadegu, I think, is 6'6", or listed at 6'6". He looks taller. He looks like he's about 6'8", and like, these guys just look like a force. They look like P4 linemen, which is kind of what is what I've been saying for the last couple of years. It's like you got to have those guys up front. And no, I mean, I think this is a really good looking line. You want your guys to look big and intimidating, and we got a bunch of 6'4", 300, 6'2", 310s. Like, just
Mhm.
big dogs, and that's what you want. That's what you want up there. So, yeah, the depth is good. I think there's a nice, healthy blend of returning guys, kind of like Larry Moore, Johnny Dixon, Gabe Blair, and then the transfers coming in. Tay Yonta is he? I think Tay Yonta is listed on the second second
Well,
string.
in the scrimmage, in the I guess the what was available from the scrimmage, he was kind of going with the first group. It looked like he was the
Okay,
starting center with Mestamaker and Blair and Braden Nelson. Like he was the center as of this most recent scrimmage. Although that was kind of like a new shift. I think before then he had sort of been more mixing in at guard, but that was
gotcha.
kind of a
Because
newer development.
he's like the biggest of the bunch, and
Yeah.
I remember hearing some buzz about him when he came over here. So I
Well, yeah,
know
he started 36 games at Abilene Christian. Like he
right.
was last 3 years started every game for them pretty much.
Yeah, that dude looks like an NFL lineman. I mean, he's
Yeah.
massive. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really have any other thoughts, but I did leave a little stupid note in my notes that I said I think Ugana Nana has my favorite smile on the team.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
No,
if
I know.
anybody else, I don't think any players listen to this, but if they do, your teammate Nana has you beat for smiles.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. I was looking at the just looking at the roster and going through their bios too, and I was like,
He looks
whoa,
so
that is
happy.
that, yeah,
He was a
that
happy
is
guy to
that
play
is a
for North
candid.
Texas. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. Well, yeah, offensive line, pretty good situation there. Not a lot of bad stuff to say. I think one thing I'll say is that the I think with the offensive line, kind of the last couple of years under Eric Morris, I think they've been decent offensive lines, and I think that they have been offensive lines that have played well throughout the game. But I think like a lot of Morris's offensive components, I think where some of the leakage and some of the more, I guess, exposed play has been more late in the games or in these crucial kind of third downs where the defense is showing blitz and they're bringing the house and the offensive line has to hold. Like I think that there have been times where the offensive line plays well throughout most of the game, but then in the fourth quarter when it's we're trying to come back as we have been a lot lately, with our defensive play. Like we're trying to come
Yeah.
back in the fourth quarter. Defense knows we're throwing the ball, and they have their pass rushers with their ears pinned back, as almost every commentator will say, ears pinned back, and they're coming, and they have given our offensive line fits in some of these late game situations. It happened a little bit against Texas State. It happened against Memphis. I think it happened against Tulane, and part of why Chandler Morris got hurt. Like some of these situations where it's like we're coming from behind and the defense knows a pass is coming, and they've been able to really come in with the pass rush hard. Our offensive line hasn't held up great, so I think that's one thing. Is I'm sure they'll be great in between the 20s. I'm sure they'll be great first, second, third quarter. But I think what I want to see more from this offensive line to show that they have really taken a step forward is, can you pass protect whenever the third and longs or whenever the defense knows there's a pass coming? Can you hold up in pass protection against a stronger pass rush and against a more calculated pass rush than just a second down pass, 2nd and 5? So that's what I would like to see from them is stepping up in key situations and giving the protection they need or creating the holes that they need to kind of make those pivotal offensive plays.
Sure.
All right. Next up is defensive line. And I think this to me might be kind of like the biggest variable group on this team. I think that the defensive line could go multiple different ways. There were a lot of additions to this defensive line. Almost everybody, as you can see in my little legend up here. So like bold green means returning starter, and just regular green means returner. Uh, Black bold means like an older edition transfer portal or JUCO, and then regular black is the high school edition. You look, it's almost all black. These are almost all newcomers. There's very little green. You got Jaden Williams here. You got Fadafehi Vailea, who's team captain, and then Zaylen Scott, who redshirted. So there's not a lot of returners in this group. It was almost all newcomers, and really in this group, this was definitely a group where you saw, I think, what Skylar Cassidy's blueprint is for recruiting is he went after a lot of guys who maybe weren't super experienced, but have the measurables. Ethan Day from Wyoming, 6'4", 250. Josh Pierce from Campbell, 6'4", 250. Dimitri Morgan, 6'5", out of Butler Community College. Like you had, they got a lot of big guys throughout the transfer portal in JUCO where they may not have a lot of experience, but I think what Skylar Cassidy's going for is those measurables and those physical abilities that you can't coach. And then I think he is banking on him and his coaching staff to be able to coach these guys up and say, hey, you guys have all this natural ability. We will teach you how to football, and we'll get you guys playing well. But nevertheless, that is a gamble. So what are kind of some of the things that you're looking for with this defensive line specifically?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it a little bit. I think that Cassidy's main approach is something that'll benefit this team is kind of X's and O's in the trenches. Just it feels like this team will be a little bit better at situational football. This has been a problem going back further than last year's. What you talked about is the trailing late in games and kind of having to be forced to pass the ball. It really limits what you can do on both sides of the ball. People don't really realize that, but if the offense is forced to pass, then the defense is on the field more. It creates a whole spiel of problems. So I think that Sam Houston's defense last year was so good at stopping the pass and so good at stopping the run, and I think that kind of like you mentioned, it's a nice, I would say, medium floor, high ceiling defense where you definitely need to upgrade on the front seven, which they did. And they brought in a ton of transfers to fix that. I know we already kind of talked about the linebackers too, with like Trey Fields and guys that are going to back them up. But yeah, you talk about a guy like Ethan Day from Wyoming. I mean, that is a huge just beast on the defensive end. That's not a guy that, or at least physically, it doesn't feel like that's a threat that we've had for a while. So I think kind of having the proven success with Cassidy of being able to stop both the pass and the run is going to definitely help with this defensive line because they forced a lot of fumbles last year too. They were really good at getting to the quarterback. They were really good at creating pressure. And I think if we're able to kind of like I started saying, just, keep situational football in our favor to where, you're not talking about like having to dance the way the other team wants to dance. You can kind of dictate your own tempo. The defensive line is such a crucial part, obviously, of the game because you're forcing pressure on the other quarterback, and you create just one turnover or at least just get them off the field one drive where they would have scored otherwise. That one drive can make just such a big difference in a game because you go down 3 scores and you got to pass the ball more, yada yada. So. It's very basic X's and O's, but yeah, like I said, I think the situationalness of what this defense brings and how successful they are at pass and rush defense. I really like his scheme, and I don't know, man. I don't think this is a team that's going to stifle so much on defense thanks to the defensive line because I think they're going to be able to get to quarterbacks. I think they're going to be able to force some pressure, and I don't know. I'm excited. I think this is maybe not the kind of like you said, I don't think it's the surefire, best position group we got. I would say at the end of the year, we'll probably be talking more about the improvements the secondary made and probably the leadership of the linebacker group more than the defensive line. But, it's a lot of transfers coming in here, and I think there's a lot of versatility that could, provide, like I said, kind of the high ceiling and medium floor. I don't want to say high floor. I don't think it's a high floor, but I'll say medium floor.
I think you have a lot of individual guys who have high floors, high ceilings too. But
yeah,
you've got a lot of guys who could individually hit, but not all of them are going to. So I think that kind of just by virtue of a numbers game, that I think that kind of limits the ceiling a little bit. Where it's like, okay, Ethan Day might be a hit, but then the defensive tackles we brought in don't hit, and then we're kind of at a wash. Like I think that's where I'm a little bit concerned is there's just so many guys who you're hoping to hit, and they're not all
Mhm.
going to hit. The question is how many hit. Not
Right.
not all of them, not none of them, but like how many hit.
That's the fun of the transfer portal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at these guys like look at defensive tackle Sadiq Clements from Louisville. He was there 2 seasons. He made 1 tackle. Avion Carter was at TCU 2 years. He made 1 tackle. Like guys like that, you just don't know what they're going to look like until they really get to on the field. So I think one other thing that's probably of important note here is that the transfer portal market for defensive linemen has just been crazy. I think I talked about this last time, but Eric Morris was saying that basically there were some guys who they would be recruiting defensive linemen, and they're looking at these guys, watching their film, saying, should we offer this guy? Should we not? Like, is he a North Texas caliber football player?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden he's got multiple P4 offers, and he's like out of our range, and probably NIL money to go with it. Like that's how it overinflated the defensive line market has been. So I think that's part of why you saw Skylar Cassidy go with some of these guys who are 6'4" and who don't have the production, but they've got the intangibles to say, okay, well, or they've got the measurables rather to say, all right, let's coach this guy up. He doesn't have the stats behind his name, so the big schools aren't as aren't throwing a bunch of money at him. So let's get this guy while his stock is low and build him up. That's kind of what the basketball team has done the last few years, I think, with some of these guys that they brought in. Brendan Lorient was kind of one of the main ones where he was like a bench player at Florida Atlantic, and then he comes in here and he's like almost our best player. So I think that there's a lot of value. There's a lot of potential value in the transfer portal that way of kind of those reclamation projects or those guys who you or like I know you're a Mavericks fan. Like what was the guy we had in like the kind of later Dirk era, Al Farouk Aminu, like a guy like that where it's like you get a guy who's kind of cast off as like a failed guy, and then you get him and you just make this perfect reclamation project, and then like he's then all of a sudden now he's going somewhere else the next year because he has built up his stock with you. Like it's a win-win situation. I know you don't like to lose people, but like if you can build up these guys' stock and get something good out of them while they're here, like it's worth it in my opinion, at least in this day and age. So that's something that I think I want to see them kind of turn this into maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not gimmicky. First of all, right. I like that it feels like you're betting on yourself as a coach, which
exactly.
Skylar Cassidy should do that. I think this is it is risky to an extent, but these are guys like I really like that it's not just Sam Houston guys. I like that there is a mix in of other options of guys who like you said have the physicality, but maybe don't have the resume that pops out. It feels like this is a group of guys that are mixed in with guys who are trusted Cassidy products, and then guys who Cassidy believes I'm going to gamble on this, and there is enough depth in this position, like you talked about. There's so many transfers because defensive line and quarterback are the two most convoluted, or not convoluted. That's not the word I'm looking for. Just oversaturated transfer positions. Convoluted, I guess, too. In the if you're one of the coaches trying to sign these kids, yes.
Right.
But yeah, it's an oversaturated market for defensive linemen and quarterbacks. So
yep, absolutely.
I like that there's about 8 or 9 guys that are transfers in that could possibly be an impact. You go all the way down to like Josh Pierce, Avion Carter. Kavian, I think I have that right. Kavian Huddleston.
Yeah.
I've been bad with names all through the previews, but there's guys top to bottom. Not just Ethan Day, not just kind of the more surefire first team rep kind of guys. Bryson Hayes, like there's guys everywhere that could step up and make an impact, and we're talking about them within the year as one of the team's best players. So
this defensive line group, especially defensive end, like you said, all those names, like these guys could be in any order by the end of the season.
Right. Also, Al-Farouq Aminu was next up. That just still hurts.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be the franchise at some point about 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, that was a really fun year bringing him in, and it was like, yeah, he fits so perfectly, and he was like, he went from a guy who was kind of cast off to a guy who was like, what is his ceiling? Like, how good can he get? But yeah, that was a fun year. But just glad he got paid. Glad he got something out of it. But yeah, so one other thing with this defensive line group, I think the last thing I'll kind of say here, yeah, like you mentioned, Sam Houston State guys, Richard Outland, starting defensive tackle there. That's a huge get. So he's not a returner for you, but he is a returning starting defensive FBS player for your current defense coordinator. Pretty much same thing with Bryson Hayes at defensive end or at the jack position. He had, I think, 4.5 sacks last year and like 1.5 the year before that. Like he was a productive player at Sam Houston. And this jack position is sort of the difference between the scheme that was being run under Capone and the scheme that Cassie's running, where instead of a 3-3-5 stack, you've got more of like a 3-3-5, where you got 3 true defensive linemen. You got your traditional defensive end, your nose tackle, your defensive tackle, and then you've got that defensive end / linebacker hybrid, that jack position. This position is one that I really love seeing us run at North Texas, because a lot of times you can get guys who are undersized. They're those tweeners, like they're kind of in between defensive end and linebacker, and more traditional schemes. They're kind of positionless. They can't find a true home. But then when you have this jack position where you have a kind of a guy who can stand up on the edge, 2-point stance, and just rush the passer, or go guard a running back in the flats, like I think this is a good position for North Texas to be able to recruit to. Bryson Hayes, he was only 231 pounds, and he's like a 5th-year senior. So a guy like that, where, like I said, he's not very big. He's too small to play a traditional defensive end position in like a traditional 4-3. But in this jack position, he's able to really get after the quarterback off the edge. Zaylon Scott, who we got from Cedar Hill last recruiting cycle, like he was a high school running back. Like he had, I think, over 800 yards his senior year, and he was defensive player as well. But he was kind of in that in between. I think that's why he didn't get recruited by bigger schools. But he has that ability to be a pass rusher off the edge and really utilize his speed there. So I think this position, and Braden Knox is my guy as far as in the most recent recruiting class. He was my favorite defensive signee. I think he'll probably take a red shirt this year, but he's got a lot of promise there too. He's got a really strong upper body for a dude who's built to kind of speed rush. That's a really good combo. So I think I'm excited about him in the future. So anyways, like I said, I kind of wanted to highlight this jack position to say, like, this is sort of when you're looking for what is the difference between the Capone scheme and the Cassidy scheme. I think the first kind of quick, high level difference is you've got an extra kind of pass rusher off the edge that you didn't have in Capone's scheme. And I think that's gonna help immensely.
Yeah, man. If you're watching defenses in the edge jack positions aren't your favorite to watch, you're lying. Yeah. They're so fun. Yeah, it always feels like, even if the team's best player is like a safety or defensive back, you're always keeping your eye on that jack position or the edge or whoever that kind of, like you said, the linebacker defensive end hybrid. They're always so fun, and they add such a spark to the defense. They definitely it is exciting that we are implementing it. So I'm on board with you. I think it's a fun group, and like I said, my main interest is just that Skylar Cassidy is a guy who can coach everything. He can coach run defense, pass defense, pass rush. I think this is going to be a efficient defense, and I think the defensive line will. It's really hard to emphasize just how much of a tick up this defensive line will be from last year. I do think it's going to be like a night and day difference of like getting teams off the field a little bit more, coming up with those big, like the third down stops that we've been grabbing about forever. Like, just just doing some of the little stuff right. There is one thing that concerns me about Sam Houston's last year is they got penalized a lot, but I haven't been able to look at if that was, a bunch of pass interferences or whatever. So regardless, I think that the high ceiling of this defensive line group is what makes them so exciting.
Yeah, and I do think that the pass rush, I think, will be much improved on the defensive line. I think you're going to get a lot better pass rush. I'm a little bit more skeptical of the run defense. I think starting defensive tackles are listed at 288 and 292. So they're not the biggest dudes. I think they're experienced players and they know how to play down there. So they're not going to just get bullied. But at the same time, and then Ethan Day right now, I think is the starting defensive end at the other spot. He was a backup at Wyoming last year after all. And I know when we were throttling Wyoming, we weren't thinking to ourselves, man, if only we could get their backup defensive end, we'd be set defensively. So
Yeah.
but no disrespect to Ethan Day. I think he's getting a lot of rave reviews, and I think he's gonna be a starter. But one thing I'll say is I think the pass should be improved. But I think where we will really know that this defense is better is if they're making plays against the run this year, particularly just making whenever teams run the ball. So many times the last 2 years, it felt like every time the team ran the ball against us, our defensive line was on its heels. Like we were not pushing the offensive line or really making them work. Like they were getting a lot of push at the line, and the running backs weren't getting hit until they were already 2-3 yards past the line of scrimmage. Like that can't be the case so easily this year. We have to really create more pressure and win more battles up front and just really get more push overall to where it feels like we're actually our defensive linemen are actually making those offensive linemen play back and struggle to get the blocks pushed where they want to be. So
yeah, like I said too. I mean, they forced a lot of fumbles last year at Sam Houston. That's like the physicality is there. So I think that even though it's not all Sam Houston guys, like I said, Skylar Cassidy knows how to coach physicality, and I feel like this. I don't want to get my hopes too high, but kind of like we've talked about all offseason, like this defense has probably the most promise, or the most I will say whatever the opposite of misplaced, you could say placed, I guess. The most placed
properly.
the most properly placed ambition for a defense that we've had, and at least in a while. I mean, it feels like there are a bunch of plug-in pieces on this defensive front that there will be plays this year where we're not like 10 yards behind the running back chasing him down the field, where we have to we're already a step behind and just their guys are faster than ours. Like it feels like, okay, this is a group that should be able to maybe stuff a third down, might be able to create some sort of might actually force the opposing quarterback to get out of the pocket and scramble, right. Which, knowing North Texas, they'll probably like run down to the sideline and sling a ball 50 yards and it goes right into their hands. Like, but we'll see. I am excited about this group, and I just like the physicality is the big thing for me. I think just creating havoc, forcing the other team to make their own mistakes. Those are the little things that you can do to help your team win. And our defense was terrible at pretty much everything last year. There was no turnovers. There was no run defense. There was no pass stops. So we'll just do some of the little things right. Just get that little extra bit of physicality, that extra bit of correct coaching, which I think we have. I like our staff. So
yeah,
I'm excited. I like the defensive line. I like the offensive line too, but I like the defensive line.
Do you have a breakout candidate defensive line you think is going to kind of emerge as a key player?
Can I go with Rudy Vargas?
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
Solely because of the name. I just started looking at him because of his name, and I was like, we have a Rudy? But no, I watched a little bit of his tape. I think he's got some of that oomph to him. So I'll go with my oomph guy. UMPH, or if it's the sound bite for like when you bite your lip and you're just like I think Rudy Vargas is a guy, and I don't know, that's my pick. I don't, there's too many guys to pick from for the defensive line group. Like you said it, and that was in my notes. I was like, I don't know who's gonna be like the guy to lead those 3-4 guys up front, but yeah, why not? We'll go with Rudy Vargas. He's my Rudy pick for 25. Yeah.
I did my best guess to just kind of approximate, but so many of these positions is like two. I think the starters are kind of set, but I think 2 through 4 is like very interchangeable at all 4 spots. But I think I'm gonna go with Zaylen Scott at defensive end. There was a play last year where he was playing against Texas Tech, and he he got past the offensive line and he was chasing down Baron Morton, and he got him to basically throw a intentional grounding. And I was like, whoa, that was he looked like a real deal player there. He didn't just look like a North Texas true freshman. He looked like a guy who belonged on the field against Texas Tech, right off the bat. So that one kind of caught my eye, and I think that, like I said, adding this jack position, I think, is going to benefit him. So I'll say Zaylen Scott is kind of a really talented athlete who I think is going to get molded into a good football player in this scheme. So that is it for the defensive line and offensive line, and I think that's it for the group, and we'll have a separate one for season preview kind of overall. But thanks for watching the position group series, and go Mean Green.